Hi, I'm Tom, and in this video I'll be showing you some of the quote-unquote cheap and easy ways that I've upgraded the level of detail on my battlefields. If you missed the Horus Heresy content on this channel, don't worry, it is coming. I got army expansions, I got a new army project that I'll slowly be starting to work on shortly, and I got some battle reports coming up. As for this video, I'm going to be making some posters or dropped flyers that you can use either as scatter terrain that you can literally scatter on your board to make it feel more lived in, or you can use them as posters to place them on your buildings. So this is all quite simple. You can, if you want to, use AI generated stuff or community generated stuff. What I've done here is, over a couple of years, for something that was actually intended for another project, I've used the Warhammer community site, and they've done a number of posters or propaganda papers or, stuff. So what you see here is just stuff that I've gone into articles on Warhammer community and found. Sadly, most of the stuff that I have here is from further back than they will allow you to go these days, so that kind of sucks if you want to recreate it. But what I've done is that I have basically made just a collage of this in Photoshop, set to a specific height. Now I will say that the size of these are actually a little bit too big. This is the first test run. I might do another run in the future because it didn't take that long to do. So I flipped it and I tried to match it to the other side so that each poster didn't necessarily have to face the right way up. I will say that this is a test run, so the text on the back side of the poster, it is actually reversed. So if you look closely, you will see that. In a proper run of this, I would go back and manually flip each of them back again instead of just flipping the whole collage of them. But you could just as easily just have a plain white background. There's no issue with that at all. This is just for convenience if I want to scatter them over a battlefield so it doesn't look out of place. To give it all a bit more texture, I crumble it up and then flatten it back just to give it that wrinkly paper texture. You can of course also rip some of them, or if you feel like it slightly burned the edges, or whatever you feel like. For this first test run, I'm just going to do them mostly plain. So what I'm going to do here is take some Mod Podge and do a layer on each side of this paper to make it more durable during gaming. And while this is drying, I'm going to test out some weathering techniques on the other sheet. I'm going to be trying to dye and weather it a little bit. There's many ways that you can do this. You can either give it a bath in some leftover coffee or tea. And I just happened to have some homemade wash out of some ink, medium, and water. And I just diluted that quite a bit more. I wasn't sure of the strength, so I did a test run on a campaign map that I'm working on for my D&D campaign. And I thought this looked alright. So instead of going over to brew some tea or coffee to give this a bath in, I decided to go for it. So this should give it a more aged look when it's all dry. So the thing that takes the longest for this project is honestly the drying time. If you want to make a quick one, just make a collage of the posters and cut them out and you're good to go. Right now it looks a little bit dark, but reminding myself that it will go away once the water portion of it has dried away, which should all be good. And here we are, it's all dried up. And since I gave it a fairly heavy soak, I didn't have to do the other side as it soaked through the paper somewhat and give it a mottled look. The other paper is dry and you can see that it has a bit of a sheen to it, which is fine. I could go and find some matte varnish to put on it if I wanted to, but I'm totally okay with this look. It looks like a poster would. So on to applying some Mod Podge to this other sheet. So while this dries on the other side, I'm going to be cutting out the first one. You can use a knife or whatever you feel like. I'm just using a pair of scissors. This will also take a little bit of time, but it is satisfying once you have them cut out and you start to see a pile of them growing in front of you. I didn't know what to expect, but I think I have a lot more posters here than I will ever need, honestly. Didn't know quite what to expect with 2 sheets of paper, but it goes a long way. So while there are some things that I would like to improve, like I said, this is a test run, and here we see one of the issues. The flip version was slightly misaligned because of the margin of the printer that all squished it all in a little bit, making it ever so slightly unaligned. giving some of the posters this little edge on one of the sides. And you can of course remove that, but that also removes some of the front of the poster. But this is something that I would fix in another run, and you can learn from me. So really the two key lessons for you here is make sure that the backside is properly aligned to it, and also stay away from the edges of the paper, depending on what your printer is capable of. And you should be good to go. And if you're wondering about the size of these posters, almost all of them are 3 centimeters tall, 30 millimeters, just over an inch, whatever works for you. And by now the weathered page of posters is ready to be cut, giving me this nice pile of posters. And if you add the first page to that pile, it becomes clear that I have a supply here that won't run out anytime soon, even if I heavily plaster this on my buildings and throw them on the battlefields. But this is a great way to bring a little bit of life and color and various levels of details with the smaller text and intricate details onto the battlefields, just like decals helps vehicles, for instance. Here you can see one of the examples of those vouchers that I was talking about. A little bit large for a guardsman. Nice big pile, feels very rewarding going from a computer screen to having a pile of physical products in front of you in almost no time. For almost every game, I think this is just fine, even with the size of them being a little bit too big. Like there are some vouchers and some, forms that infantrymen would fill out when they lost a last gun, or if they needed a rest period or something like that. But yeah, they're a little bit too big for the figures, but it does read at a distance, so I think it's fine. But if I wanted to do a realistic size, I would do another sheet for sure. Here you can see some examples of them in use. Like I said, either dropped from an aircraft as flyers, propaganda, or put onto buildings, or just, as part of debris that was in the city and have just been strewn about and left there as the city was abandoned. And of course they don't interfere much with gameplay, and even if they do move during a game, it's just paper blown in the wind and by explosions. It doesn't matter, that has no impact on the game, so it's a nice little detail. If you've made it all the way here, I want to thank you, and if you're one of those kind people that have subscribed or liked or chosen to share your feelings about what I make, that means a lot to me, so thank you for doing that. And like I said, there will be more heresy content coming, if that's what you're here for. And until next time, cheers.